Good morning, everybody. I'm Deborah De Cesare. I'm a senior researcher in the Digital Health and Life Science Innovation Observatories of Politecnico di Milano. These observatories are a research center that were born some years ago in the Management Engineering Department of Politecnico, and they try to study the impact of technologies and innovation in general on the healthcare sector, if we look at the Digital Health Observatory, or in the life science sector, so analyzing the impact on pharma, medtech, and biotech companies. We try to understand which are also the hot topic and the hot trends of innovation in each of these markets. So, for example, some of the most interesting issues and themes to be analyzed in the Digital Health Observatories have to do with telemedicine, with healthcare hubs, or AI for decision support systems. On the other hand, for example, in Life Science Innovation Observatory, we analyze the impact of technology in the research and development process in pharma and medtech companies, and the role, for example, of this decentralized clinical trial or innovative products, so for example, digital therapeutics or advanced therapeutics and so on. So my objective today is to present you some of the most interesting results of our last research that we closed in June and July, and to give you the representation of what is the Italian context on these themes. So a very important introduction has to do, for example, with the recovery plan or the Recovery and Resilience National Plan, so PNNR, which is a reform that since last year is really shaping the market, not only in digital health and life science issue, but also on other sectors and reforms. But it's really important because it's giving a lot of resources to the sectors that I represented before, so healthcare sectors, but also transport, also public administration, and so on. And a lot of these investments are really shaping the market. So we start from this analysis of the recovery plan to understand where and what issues in particular are included in this plan in order to understand what will be the main changes in the Italian market in the next years, because the recovery plan aims to give some reforms and reshaping of markets since 2025. So the main components of Mission 6, that is dedicated to healthcare system, is represented in these slides. In the first component, we find some themes regarding the telemedicine, the proximity networks, and healthcare assistance near to patients' home. 7 billion euro are given to this component. The component 2, instead, is focused on reinforcing the healthcare structure. So we are talking about hospitals, so more structure and better structure will be formed in next years, but also technological infrastructure. So in these components, there are, for example, some reforms focused on digitalization of the national healthcare system. So 80.63 billion will be dedicated of euros will be dedicated to reinforcing the healthcare system and also the digitalization of these infrastructures. So some of our main key topics of research are really matching these reforms. For example, I inserted in the second part of the slide some of the key issues, so telemedicine to support the chronic patients, development of digital skills for healthcare professionals, but also reinforcements of infrastructure and digitalization of the system. So I will give you some of our results of our research for supporting these arguments, and also to understand where are the main gaps that will see the most important investment in next years. I start from telemedicine. This is a really key topic at an international level, but also at Italian level, because during the COVID pandemic, it was really important to have these telemedicine services to continue to assist some patients and to support healthcare professionals to communicate, for example, in a remote way. So really, all the actors of the system understood how important it is to invest in a really organization reform in order to include telemedicine in our healthcare system. So 1 billion of euros is focused really and dedicated to telemedicine. The objective and the target to be reached by 2025 is to reach at least 200,000 people by telemedicine with telemedicine services. This is challenging, of course, for our context, but it will be really important to work in these years to reach these objectives, because otherwise, like it's the actual situation, there will be just some best practice that are isolated and not let's say, reached at the system level. And so the benefits connected with telemedicine will not be reached by the healthcare system. So we are going and we are making the first steps in order to reach these objectives, like, for example, build a platform at national level in order to offer telemedicine services to patients in a homogeneous way. And some reforms also to the territory, like MD 71 is the number of the laws in Italy that are going to give precise guidelines to the territorial actors, such as nurses and structures on the local level, that will use also digital technologies to reach patients. This data summarized how much the medical specialists and general practitioners, so healthcare professionals in Italy, use and are interested in using the telemedicine services. We reported televisit and telemonitoring, such as two of the most important services of telemedicine, but they are not only the only ones, but they are really representative, because we can see that before the pandemic, so in 2021, we gathered data that demonstrated that at least the 5-10% of healthcare professionals ever used televisit or telemonitoring. So the level of usage was really limited, was really low. Then, as I said before, the COVID pandemic made us think about the possibility to use digital technologies at a general level, and so telemedicine in this specific context. And the usage really increased. So we had 40% more or less of professionals that ever use a televisit in order to visit their patients, or the 28% of medical specialists, but the 43% of general practitioners that use telemonitoring to assist their patients. And it's really important because also COVID patients were monitored by apps or softwares that allowed the professional to keep some parameters under control, such as the cardiac parameters or oxygen level in blood. But also other kind of patients, like chronic patients, that are really important to be monitored continuously over time, were monitored by general practitioners through these technologies. So COVID pandemic, as I said before, give us the possibility, let's say, and constraint to use this technology. In last year, so in 2022, we see a decrease of the level of usage, because we are slowly coming back to a normality situation. So it's normal to see a decrease in the level of use of this technology, but it's an increase if we compare it to the pre-pandemic level. But it's really important to see the level of interest for the future, so the arrow that you see on the right, because more or less the 60%, we start from 50, then to 60% of professionals are interested in using these technologies in the future. Because they see which are they are starting to see which are the benefits in using this technology, such as efficiency benefits. They can exchange information faster. They can receive information before visits and then gain time to dedicate it to the patients. Or they can avoid unnecessary movements and also in this case gain time. So there are a lot of benefits of better outcomes, but also better efficiency connected to this telemedicine. But in Italian context, there are also some barriers, some obstacles that makes difficult to telemedicine to spread all over the country. In particular, one of the most important barriers has to do with the organization, because some of the professionals, also 56% of them that used these telemedicine services told us that they were additional activities to the normal ones. So they considered telemedicine such as an addition to their work, and it's not good, of course, because telemedicine has to be integrated in the work of the professional and has to do with an additional channel to reach the patients, but not an additional activity or an additional visits for them. And on the other hand, another barrier has to do with patients that are not so educated nowadays with the use of these channels and these digital technologies. So they make requests to professionals also through other channels like WhatsApp, like other apps that are used in their life for other scopes. So we are going to work as a country on these issues in order to make telemedicine easier to be introduced in next years. Also, patients see really the opportunity to use these technologies. For example, the televisits with the general practitioner or with the medical specialist, as you can see, is now used very limitedly. We are talking about 8 and 13%. But more than 80% of patients are interested in using these visits, remote visits, or telemonitoring in the next future. So they are really interested in trying these technologies in order to gain benefits from them. And they understood which are the, as I said before, the efficiency also benefits that can be gained from these technology usage. Changing arguments, another interesting theme that we analyze in our research are the healthcare apps and digital therapeutics. These are connected with telemedicine and also other themes of the research, because sometimes you, for example, you carry on telemonitoring through apps, or you can give an intervention through digital therapeutics. In Italy nowadays, there are not digital therapeutics that are approved by our regulation. Although they are a reality at international level, we are just trying to understand how to overcome the obstacles that have to do with the regulatory entities involved and the pathway to be done to, let's say, make digital therapeutics a reality. But professionals also in this case are really interested in prescribing an app to their patients. So they see which are the benefits connected with not only an advice or a voluntary use of these applications, but a prescription of an application in order to make this part of the therapy for the patient. And also companies, so we are talking about mainly pharma companies, but also medtech companies in Italy are really focusing their investments, but also resources, personal resources and people to understand how to make digital therapeutics real an opportunity in Italy. They are investing in developing some software and trying to certificate them as, for example, a medical device. And they see that 36% of companies that we interviewed see the digital therapeutics as one of the highest priority for the future. But as I said before, there are some gaps, some obstacles and barriers to be overcome. And for example, the absence of reimbursability by the National Health Services, that was one of the barriers for telemedicine before COVID pandemic, have to be overcome. All, as I said before, the limited clarity of the clinical validation process. So we will see if this area of innovation will really become interesting in Italy as it is at international level. For example, in America, we see a lot of digital therapeutics approved. Second area of the recovery plan that I would like to underline is the development of digital skills for professionals, because it's really important to understand that the development and the digitalization of a system like healthcare system is not only connected with the technologies to be developed, but you have also to prepare people to use them in an appropriate way. So these investments are really focused on educate, but also give new skills to the healthcare professional in order to use properly these, for example, telemedicine systems, but also electronic health record, in order to use them properly during their work and not only adding them at a certain point of their working life. So also in this case, we have some targets, some objectives to be reached, but I would like to underline just that there are investments dedicated to prepare people to use them. In other missions of the recovery plan, there are also investments addressing people, citizens, and patients in order to develop these skills. So we are trying as a country to invest really in increasing the education of people through digital and through innovation in general. Okay, in the third investments that I mentioned before, the reinforcement of technology infrastructure, one of the most interesting aspects that we are trying to analyze as an observatory has to do with the electronic health record. This is an important issue for connected care in general, for digital health in Italy, because this is a platform that operating at a national level, that tries to gather all the documents, healthcare documents and data from patients in order to be accessed by professionals, but also the patient himself. This is a theory, and this is the target, let's say, at which we are trying to arrive. Nowadays, this platform exists for all the citizens, and during the COVID pandemic, it was really important because through this platform, we accessed to Green Pass, COVID documentations, vaccine research, and so on. So a lot of citizens use them, and you can see the percentage increase through the last year. So more or less the 20% of increase with respect to 2021. And this was connected with what I was saying before, so with the access to COVID documentation. So this is an occasion, again, to understand how these platforms and digital tools can be useful for all citizens and patients. What are the main criticalities nowadays? That, as you probably know, Italy is divided in a lot of regions, and these regions that you can see in the map on the left make decisions on health and on digital health in particular. So until now, and let's say in this period, a lot of digital tools and also electronic health records had some differences through different regions. So there were not an homogeneous situation at the regional or let's say national perspective. We also had a different kind of documents that can be uploaded on this platform at the regional level. So we have difference between Puglia, let's say, in the south of Italy, and Lombardy, that is in north of Italy. So one of the main challenge for the next years is to give this, let's say, country an homogeneous way to access to documents, and to give this platform also a much more importance in gathering data that can be useful for professionals to make decisions about the patients. And also in this case, the recovery plan gives some reforms and investments specifically dedicated to the electronic health record, because this is, as I said before, one of the most important platforms to be developed in order to also connect it to other services. For example, telemedicine services can be connected to the electronic health record in order to give the patient the possibility to access them through a unique platform. This could be really important to be, let's say, reached in next years. Just to conclude my speech, I would like to report these results of a Life Science Innovation Observatories research, in which we analyze startups at an international level, not only at an Italian level, because the sample would be just too little, in order to understand how they are, let's say, how they are dividing among the different areas of innovation, like digital therapeutics, like robotics, real-world data. So some of the most interesting trends in life science sector, and how much funding they gained in the last years, in order to understand which are the strategic areas of innovation, like just looking at startups. Of course, it's not a holistic view of the innovation in this sector, but this gives us a really good point of view, because startups shape the market also in the future. So we can see which will be the market of life science in the next 3-5 years. Some of the strategic areas of innovation have to do with advanced therapeutics that are not, let's say, are not presented in this relation, because I had some minutes, but it's really an interesting deepening area of innovation that we are trying to analyze. But also artificial intelligence and all the possible applications in the healthcare system and life science sector, which are really a lot, and have to do with the decision support system for professionals, healthcare professionals, as I said before, but also for accelerating research and development of drugs and sensor and medical devices, or analyzing data in general for predictive and personalized medicine. So these are some of the most interesting areas that we are trying to analyze in next years. But also we have the sector of high attractiveness that has to do with sectors and areas in which we have a lower number of startups, but that gained a lot of fundings, as you can see on the other axis. So here we find, for example, digital therapeutics, but also in silico trial, quantum computing, that are some, let's say, focused sectors which are lower startups, maybe because there are barriers, as I said before, with the digital therapeutics that are, let's say, have an obstacle to become really important in next years, but they are really interesting for all the actors of the market. So they have to be under our attention. And then there are niche markets, so some arguments that we are trying to analyze because they could be interesting in next years, but nowadays there are limited investments and actors that are trying to work on these, let's say, arguments and areas of innovation actually. For example, the centralized clinical trial, we try to analyze this area of innovation. In Italy, we try to spot some examples, but they are not so diffuse, but also at the international level, they spread through COVID pandemic, but we are trying to see if in next years we will see a lot of examples with respect to the actual situation. So this could be a synthesizing map that could give us a view through the future of healthcare and life science sector. Okay, I'm glad to be here with you. I thank you for your attention, and there is my mail contact if you have questions or curiosity on this observatory and our research. So thank you very much, and goodbye.